This video was made possible thanks to generous donations from my lovely supporters on Patreon. Hello my beloved darlings, my name is Sonia Sizer and welcome to my YouTube channel. Recently I have gotten into the habit of posting some of my drag looks to my Instagram, and a lot of people asked me if I would be willing to record tutorials next time, and here I am today and I'm getting ready to do a new drag look. So I will be taking you through the entire process of getting myself in drag. Also, a lot of people have asked me whether I still call myself a drag queen. Do I consider myself a drag queen since I came out as a trans woman 6 years ago? So I'm gonna do a little bit of a story time for you while I do my makeup, and hopefully it will be interesting for you to watch. The first thing that I'm doing is priming my eyes, and I usually use Kryolan TV paint stick, but because I'm out of Clown White, I'm using, there's a sticker over it so I can't tell what the name of it is, but it's also something Kryolan Clown White, and it's just like the paint stick, but this is a little bit more greasy. I also don't really have any fancy brushes, I just use whatever brushes I find at the dollar store, so I'm just using the smallest brush that I have now to apply makeup to my eyelids. So I started doing drag, well, makeup to be precise, in 2007, 14 years ago. 14 years ago when I used to be 14 years old. As a queer kid growing up in a very small countryside in a very conservative country like Serbia, obviously I didn't really have a lot of exposure to queer culture, and my first exposure to anything queer was catching the performance of the Scissor Sisters, who were performing on Exit Festival that year. I watched it on television. The Scissor Sisters are a music band, a rock band, and they at the time were consistent out of one straight man, 3 gay men, and 1 straight cis woman who used to do drag. But they were all very, very queer in expression, and the singer Jake Shears was very flamboyant, and to me it was very empowering to see a flamboyant queer man performing on stage, tens of thousands applauding, and all of us watching it on television. The only glimpses of queer representations that I used to have before that were parodies where LGBT identities were made fun of. I'm now taking this brush and I'm using this green color to cut my crease. The next year, when Exit Festival for 2007 was approaching, they had Where They At Now segment on television where they were basically playing new music of people who used to perform last year to show us where they at now. And Scissor Sisters at the time had just published a music video for a song called Kiss You Off, which features the singer animatronic in a futuristic makeup salon where she's having her makeup done by tens of different makeup artists. She had rhinestones all over her face, and I remember just looking at her and thinking, oh my god, I really want to be that when I grow up. I want to be this fabulous woman who has a fabulous rock band and makes fabulous rock music and wears these fabulous costumes and glitter and rhinestones. I was also heavily inspired by Roisin Murphy from her Overpowered era. I really like the cover that David LaChapelle did for the album, as well as all the music videos from that era and all the costumes that she's wearing in those videos. I was also heavily inspired by women like Björk, Paloma Faith, Lady Gaga, Grace Jones, Grimes, these women who were not just vocalists and musicians, but who would also go out on the stage and they would wear these fabulous costumes that looked more like sculptures than clothing. These women who just look like walking art. My mother is pretty much of a victim of consumerism. She follows up all the magazines, she follows all the sales, she follows all the discounts. She shops, and then when she comes home she just puts it somewhere in the back of a closet, and 99% of those things never see the light of day again. And then every 10 years, when she literally cannot breathe from stuff anymore, she starts decluttering and just throws away stuff. And I remember that summer she threw away into the trash this big bag full of makeup. She had everything. Eyeshadow palette, mascara, foundations, everything, blushes, but nothing was opened. Everything was brand new, but like expired 10 years ago because the woman just doesn't do her makeup. She just suffers from that, to shop. And I remember that I stole that bag from the trash and hid it under my bed, and when my family would go to sleep, I would lock myself in the bathroom and try to look myself like animatronic from the Scissor Sisters. And in 2008, when I was 15 years old, I remember buying my first wig. It was a cheap, plastic-looking blonde wig. This is going to sound absolutely hilarious, but in 2009, in February, they finally got internet connection into my village. And I remember that the first things that I googled were drag queens and transgender. I didn't know what any of these words meant, but I heard these words on television, in TV shows, on movies, and I found some recognition in them. I knew that I am something like that. But I didn't really have the vocabulary to elaborate my feelings about gender or expression. So a drag queen is somebody who uses makeup and wigs and costumes and performance as a form of artistic expression, and a trans woman is somebody who is assigned male at birth but wants to transition and live their entire life as a woman. I'm both. I am a transgender woman, I live 24/7 as a woman, but I am also a drag queen. I use makeup and colorful wigs and glittery costumes and dramatic performances as a part of my artistic expression. I discovered RuPaul's Drag Race in 2013. They were in their 5th season, but I remember being very puzzled by how they transformed themselves like that. I remember seeing their hair and thinking to myself like, okay, I know it's a wig, but I don't understand how it looks like it's growing out of their scalp. I didn't know what a lace front wig was. I didn't know what hip padding was. I remember watching them walk down the runway and thinking to myself like, I don't get how they are so curvy. Like, I saw them in the workroom out of drag. They don't have these curves. How do they do that? So I was constantly Googling things like, how do they do these things? And I was watching tutorials, and learning how all of these things are being done, and I started to polish my own craft. When I finished high school, I didn't really have the money to go to college, so I moved to Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia, and I found a job as a waitress, and I rented the smallest, cheapest studio apartment I could find, so all of my money and all of my tips can go into drag. And that's when my trajectory started very rapidly. I spent a couple of years performing as a drag queen, but in time I had to deal with the fact that being a woman on stage for a couple of hours is just not enough for me, because I would also have to come home and take all the wigs off and all the makeup off and all the hip pads off, and when I would see myself in the mirror, I would see a boy. And that was crushing and devastating to me. So around 2015-16, I finally had to deal with the fact that I am also a transgender woman and that I want to transition. Gender dysphoria is a very complex feeling, and a lot of cisgender people try to understand it by describing it as being trapped in the wrong body, or for example saying that a trans woman is a woman trapped in a man's body. But I don't like those expressions because I feel like they're not very representative of my experience. When cisgender people are unsatisfied with the way they look and they decide to get into a gym and lose weight, we don't really say that they are a skinny person trapped inside of a fat person's body, you know? That just sounds silly. We just say that they are a person who wants to change something about themselves. And that's how I experience myself as a trans woman. I am not a woman trapped in a man's body, I am my body. And as such, I should have the full control over my body to change it as I wish and to adjust it to my own needs. So gender dysphoria doesn't really mean that I want exclusively hyper-feminine things. That's not really the way it works. Sometimes it can be completely opposite. Like, for example, when I was living as a boy and doing drag, at the time, wearing wigs and heavy makeup and hip pads would make me look like a woman, and it would make other people, as I said, recognize me as a woman and communicate with me as a woman. But when I came out as a trans woman and when I started hormone replacement therapy, and when I grew out my own natural hair and my hormones made my skin look softer, and I had laser hair removal of my beard, and I started growing breasts, and I started growing my own hips, I felt like I looked more like a woman when I'm out of drag. And when I would get in drag and wear heavy makeup and huge wigs and hip pads, I didn't really feel like a woman. I started to feel more like a transvestite, like a drag queen. And that started to make me feel dysphoric. And that's when I started to feel a repulsion towards drag. So in 2016, I made a public Facebook post where I made an announcement saying that, hey, this is not just a costume anymore, I am officially transitioning, I am a trans woman now. And at the time, I started to feel this need to try to distance myself from drag, to try to distance myself from drag queens, because it was really, really important for me that people understand that I'm not just a drag queen, I'm a woman. At this time, I really started to struggle with dysphoria a lot. And I fought with it for a very long time. And I say fought because I literally never stopped loving drag. I was still buying wigs, I was still buying makeup, I was still doing parties and hiring drag queens to perform at those parties. But the moment when people would call me a drag queen, or when they would say like the mother of Belgrade drag scene, that would really make me feel dysphoric. And then I would start to feel this need to distance myself from drag and distance myself from drag queens, because once again, I was afraid of being seen as a drag queen, because I repeat, at the time, it was really important for me for people to see me as a woman. And at the time, I used to be very insecure about my gender, and like many trans people in the beginning of their transition, you want to be socially recognized as your true gender. And I was also a people pleaser. Being a people pleaser is generally just a bad idea. It's just a completely unnecessary waste of your time and energy. You will never be able to please everybody, because sometimes there will be people who will want completely opposite things from you. And if you try to please one group of people, then the other ones who want completely opposite thing will be furious. If you try to please them, then these are gonna be furious, and it's just a completely unnecessary waste of your time and energy. You should try to do what makes you happy, and only you. And I know it's a cliche to say that, but it's still not being said enough. You should do what makes you happy, not other people. I used to be a people pleaser up until this year. In the beginning of this year, I had some health issues. I wasn't feeling very well, and when I went to my doctor and described my symptom to them, they told me that one of the possibilities is cancer. So I went through a bunch of blood tests, ultrasounds, examinations, and in the end it wasn't cancer. They were like, oh, it's something else. We're gonna give you medication, and in a couple of months you're gonna be as good as new. But in that process of waiting for your diagnosis, things start to go through your head, and the thing that was going through my head was, oh my god, I'm so young, I don't want to die, I haven't even experienced life. And at the time I started asking myself, if I was to be told that it is cancer and that I might die, would I be satisfied with the life that I have lived so far? And the sad reality was that my answer was no. I haven't really spent my life chasing the things that I want. I was just trying to please everybody around me. Also, I would very often try to lessen myself, to make myself not look so intimidating to other people. When, as I said, I used to work as a DJ, and the music industry is very much dominated by cis men. This is especially the case for Serbia. Like, if you see the lineups for our festivals, there are like almost no women DJs. If you're to see a typical website about music in Serbia, it's mostly about male performers. Women have a hard time getting anywhere. So if you're a woman and you're very good at what you do, that can make cis men feel very intimidated by your presence. So a lot of the times I would try to lessen myself in order not to be so intimidating to them. And then because women and LGBT people have a hard time getting anywhere, if you experience some kind of a success, then a lot of women and other LGBT people can be like, why her and not me? This especially goes for drag queens. Drag queens can be very ego-driven, they can be very petty, they can be very jealous, they can be very envious, and we all try to be like, oh, we're a community and we really like each other, but most drag queens don't really like the success of the other drag queens. Also, whenever I would experience any kind of success, there would be a lot of burden that comes with it. Like, for example, when I would experience a lot of exposure because I was booked for a big music festival or because I was on television, like at some point Vice made a documentary about my life. Like, yeah, you're being exposed to a huge number of people and some of them are gonna follow you on Instagram, they're gonna find out who you are, they're gonna maybe come to your party, they're gonna buy a ticket. But more people are gonna, because this is a conservative and very homophobic country, are gonna come to your profile to send you death threats. We're gonna find you, we're gonna do this to you, we're gonna do that to you. And you can't really enjoy the success that you're experiencing because of that. So I've kind of had to train myself to try to be successful where I'm successful enough that I can pay my bills, but not too successful where I am too much in the faces of homophobes and transphobes. Not to be too intimidating to men, not to be too successful where other women DJs or LGBT performers might get envious of my success. Because when people are envious of you, what do? They try to abolish you and your success with defamations and gossip. But I think it's very important for every single young performer to understand this, and this is why I'm making this video. It's when you're doing something, there's gonna be backlash whatever you do as long as people are walking this earth. Don't stop to address the haters. Don't try to please everybody. Don't try to explain yourself. Don't try to clear your name. Just continue to do what you do best. And everything else is just a distraction. So yeah, I would spend a lot of my time trying to lessen myself. So when I finally got my diagnosis and I was told that, oh, it's not cancer, it's something else, I was like, well, now I'm on a completely new mission, aren't I? I am on a mission to unapologetically and unstoppably, without a compromise, express my full potential. I want to strive towards all the success, all the pleasures, and all the happiness in this world, regardless of how many people might be angry, offended, jealous, envious, or mean towards me. I want to be happy, and I do not agree on anything else less than that. I finished both eyes, so now I'm gonna cut my creases with the same white and the same brush that I used to apply this as a primer for the eyeshadow. This summer, I started experiencing an overwhelming wave of ideas, inspiration, and self-confidence because of what had happened to me. A lot of the things that I was repressing for a very long time started to burst out. And the more I was letting myself do whatever I want, the more I felt like I was finally manifesting as the true me. And drag was definitely one of those things that I was repressing because, you know, when transphobes try to humiliate trans women, what do they say to us? They say, oh, a man in a dress, a man in a wig, oh, man in makeup. So I unconsciously started developing an animosity towards those things. I started developing this aversion towards drag because I was just so afraid of being called a man in a wig. And then in time, I realized that the fact that I'm not wearing a wig in a video has literally zero effect on whether transphobes are coming to my channel to leave a comment calling me a man in a wig. And in time, I realized that it's not about me, it's not about my gender, it's not about the wig, it's about them. What I really want people, especially young people, to understand is that people who post hate comments, like people who log into social media to call somebody fat, ugly, disgusting, this, that, or people who come to transgender people's profiles to misgender us or try to humiliate us by calling trans women men, etc. These people are not trying to describe you. They're trying to describe to you how they feel. There is not a single adult, mature person who's happy in their life, who logs into social media hoping to make themselves feel better by ruining somebody else's day. This is something that only deeply immature and deeply miserable people do, because the only way of coping with their misery is by spreading it. And the sooner people realize that, the sooner they're gonna stop obsessing so much about hate on the internet. And when I finally realized that, that's when I started to feel so much freedom to do whatever the hell I want to do. And I finally felt free to do drag again. So my eyes are finally finished completely. I'm gonna set it and then I'm gonna move on to contouring my face. So for my foundation, I am using a Kryolan TV paint stick in the shade FS40. And I'm just applying that all over my face. Now I'm taking a beauty blender and I'm gonna blend the entire face. I know that it looks very orange for now and that I look like an Oompa Loompa, but that is fine. I like to use a little bit darker than my own skin tone, and then I use the color of my skin tone as highlights, and then I use a shade darker for cutting the cheek because it creates that nice little radiant, as they would call it, the beige rainbow, where you can see a bunch of colors being blended into each other. It's gonna look good in the end, just trust me. Now I'm using Kryolan TV paint stick to contour, and I'm using the shade NG1. And now I'm contouring my jawline. I'm just dragging it down the neck to make it look like a natural fade. And now I'm finally moving on to highlights, and for my highlights I'm using the color Ivory. Blending it all in. Highlighting the tip of my nose. And now I'm gonna contour my cheeks even more and cut it with a lighter shade, the same one that I use for highlights. I want really dramatic highlights when I'm in drag. If you're just starting to do drag, the thing that you might think when you're doing your makeup in the mirror is that, oh, it looks so extreme. But what you need to understand is people are seeing you from afar, not from a close-up. So you need to paint for the back row. I remember so many times trying to do my makeup when I was performing and thinking, oh, I'm gonna stop here. I'm not gonna go too crazy. This already is starting to look crazy. And then I would receive photos from my performance, and in those photos that were taken from in front of the stage, I look like I'm not wearing enough makeup at all. And now I'm just gonna set everything with the powder. I used to do bronzer to set my cheeks, but now I can't really find a bronzer that's dramatic enough for me, so I just use the brown in my eyeshadow palette, just to set it into place even more and make it even more dramatic. Chiseling that jawline down, dragging it down the neck to create like a natural looking fade. Now moving on to the other cheek. And I also use the pink in my eyeshadow palette as a blush. I like to save money, and if something can be used, then there's no really need of buying a blush if you can just use the eyeshadow palette. So you'll see that a lot of the times, like, I'm gonna be drawing my eyes with like lip liners, I'm gonna be drawing my lips with like an eyeliner, or whatever I find. The most important thing is that it works, not what the label says what it's for. Today I'm going for a little bit of a dramatic blush. I'm going for almost like a clownish look, because the look that I'm doing today is kind of clownish. Now I'm just baking those highlights into place. This is also going to fix all the blush that has gotten into a place where a highlight is supposed to be. Cutting the cheeks. This is what we call baking. We're baking all the highlights into place. So going back to my story time, the moment when I realized that whatever you do, you're always gonna get backlash, and that trying to please other people and that trying to clear your name is a complete waste of time, because you're gonna have haters as long as you're doing anything, and as long as there are people walking this earth. That's when I felt the real freedom to do whatever I want. And it was the first time that I felt the freedom to be as creative as I want to be, regardless of whether it's photos that I'm doing in drag for my Instagram or my YouTube videos. I also have another drag persona that I work through, and her name is Gospođa Pereca, which translates to English as Madame Pretzel, and she's an old Yugoslav comrade providing resistance to occupation forces. I created an Instagram for her, I created a Facebook page for her, she has her own YouTube account. You can watch her videos if you wish to. And right now I am having so much fun. And that is radically different from what I was used to doing, which is trying to please everybody else and, trying to be this perfect representation for transgender people, and not somebody who people would look at and be like, oh, that's a man in a dress, that's a man in a wig, that's a man in too much makeup. Now that I have finished contouring my face, I'm gonna start shaping my eyes with the eyebrows and the eyeliner. So my card went out of memory, and while I was charging all the footage on my computer, I did my entire right eye, and I'm gonna do on camera my entire left eye. This is the hardest part of doing makeup, just taking your eyeliner and trying to make it match the other side. And now I'm gonna create this like cat eye looking angle of the eye on this side. Now I'm gonna take a lip liner and I'm gonna draw on my other eyebrow, because as I said, I don't really use things for what they were made for. I use them for what they're good at. And now I'm taking a white eyeliner and just defining the brow even more. Now moving on to highlighter. I'm gonna set my eyes. And this kind of makes my cheeks wet for the highlight. I also like to wet the brush to make that highlighter really stick. I like a really dramatic highlighter. The Cupid's bow, a little bit on the nose, and just a little bit of a dot on the ends of the nose. A little bit on the forehead, and there you have it. And now I'm gonna do my lips. Obviously, when I do drag, I overdraw my lips. I start by outlining my lips the way they actually look, and then I start to go over and try to make them look bigger and bigger. And I overdraw until I have the proper cartoon caricature looking lips, which I consider to be appropriate for drag. I'm not really good at making my lips look even, so this is the most even that you will get from me. So the last touch are the eyelashes, and I'm taking 2 pairs of eyelashes and sticking them together to make them look like one big drag lash. And where was I with my story time? Oh god. Yeah, I guess the point of this video is that I don't really like being asked right now, where do you see yourself in the future? Because this is the first time in my life ever that I'm actually not planning ahead. This is the first time in my life that I am just doing what I really want to do in this particular moment. Going with the flow, as the young people would say. I guess I'm in some kind of a process of reintroducing myself to myself first and then to the audience second. For the first time in a very long time, I am feeling like I am getting to know myself better. I am, for the first time in a very long time, getting to know parts of myself that I have been trying to repress for a very long time. I'm having fun and I am really enjoying myself, and at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. And the final touch is setting the whole face. So my makeup is officially done. I'm now gonna go take off these clip-ins and I'm gonna go put my wig on and my outfit, and I'm gonna get to photo shooting. So my darlings, this is the finished look. I hope you have enjoyed the time we have spent together. If there's any point to this video, I guess the point would be, if you were to be told that you're gonna die tomorrow, what would you spend your last day on earth doing? What would be that thing that you would be just so sad that you didn't get to do? Something that you've always wanted to do but were too afraid to do it because you thought that you would be judged. Now, go outside and do that. You don't need to experience a health scare or a, God forbid, near-death experience to realize that life is short and you should live your life as your true, authentic self right now. So I guess that's the end of this video, my darlings. If you want to stay connected with me, you can follow me on all of my social media, which will be listed down below. If you want to financially support my work, you can follow me on Patreon, which is my members-only website, and my followers on Patreon get special member benefits, like early access to my videos, access to my Patreon-only content, and they get credited in the back of all of my videos. Special thanks to Dušan Jeftić, Filip Božanić Dimovski, Filip Lopičić, Milan, and Miloš Seničar. Or if that seems like too much of a bother, you can also make a one-time donation by using PayPal. I hope you have enjoyed the time we have spent together, and I will see you very soon on the next one. Bye!